The idea stayed with me. If we stopped firing, what would they do? By then, the ammunition pile on the table had grown thin. The children were asleep from sheer exhaustion, called together in the back room. The women sat silent, faces pale in the lamplight. The house smelled of smoke, sweat, and fear. Outside, the yard had gone still again. I lowered the shotgun slightly. "Elmer," I said quietly, "hold your fire." He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "You seen what they are?" he muttered. "I seen what they do when we shoot," I replied. That was the truth. Every time we fired, they reacted, flipping, drifting, repositioning. But they had never changed. They had never charged, never clawed at the door, never broken a window. They approached, they observed, they tested, but they did not attack. For the first time that night, we waited without pulling a trigger. Minutes passed. The silence stretched long enough that my heartbeat began to slow. Then one stepped into the yard again. Same height, same glowing eyes, same thin, hanging arms. It stopped just beyond the porch light. I kept the shotgun raised but did not fire. It took one slow step forward, not aggressive, measured. Another step. It reached the edge of the porch. Its head tilted slightly, as if listening to something we could not hear. Behind it, two more figures emerged near the fence line, standing several yards apart. They weren't closing in. They were forming a loose arc. My mouth went dry. This wasn't a random movement. It was arrangement. The one at the porch lifted its arm slowly, the fingers extended outward, long and thin. It wasn't reaching to grab. It wasn't striking. It was gesturing. A motion almost like pointing, but not at us, at the house, at the door. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear this time, understanding. It wanted entry, not by force, by invitation. The realization hit like ice water. If we opened that door, if we stepped aside, we would not be facing animals in the yard. We would be welcoming something unknown into our home. And somehow, I knew that line, once crossed, would not be undone. I tightened my grip on the shotgun but held my ground. The creature's arm lowered slowly when no door opened. Its head tilted once more, studying us through the thin barrier of wood and screen. Then, almost in unison, the three figures stepped back, not fleeing, not startled, simply retreating. As if a conclusion had been reached, they drifted toward the fence, then beyond it, vanishing once more into the dark field where the light had fallen hours earlier. We waited 5 minutes, 10, no return, no scratching on the walls, no pacing on the roof, just the distant hum of insects returning to their rhythm. And for the first time since sunset, the yard remained empty. But I did not feel relief because I could not shake the thought they had learned what they needed. Dawn did not bring peace. By the time the first pale light of morning touched the fields, the yard looked ordinary, innocent, even. Grass swayed in the wind, the fence stood undisturbed, and the house, battered by gunfire and long hours of tension, looked just like any farmhouse in Kentucky. Yet inside, no one moved freely. We sat huddled in the living room, eyes flitting to the windows, ears straining at every whisper of wind, every creak in the wood. That night had stretched time into something elastic, something we could not measure anymore. Minutes had felt like hours, hours like days. The man stepped outside cautiously, inspecting the yard and surrounding fields. Bullet holes lined the porch and windows. Splintered wood littered the ground, and yet there were no footprints, no bodies, no evidence of what had hovered over us all night. Just silence. It was impossible. Whatever had stalked us had weighed, had presence, yet it felt nothing behind. I felt a cold understanding wash over me. They were not animals and they were not spirits. They were something else entirely, something patient, something that did not need to leave a trace to assert its existence. The women began preparing breakfast, hands shaking but moving methodically around themselves in routine. The children had awakened, still confused, half asleep, unaware of the full terror of the night. My gaze wandered to the horizon where the fields met the trees. I expected movement, expected the flicker of glowing eyes in the distance, but there was nothing, only the wind whispering through the tall grass. Even in the daylight, the memory of the yellow eyes remained vivid. I replayed every moment, the way they floated, the way they tilted their heads, the precision of their observation, every gunshot, every step we had taken, every breath we had drawn had been noticed. It occurred to me that then that our lives, our home, our very routines had been part of an experiment, and for reasons unknown, we had passed. They had left us, but the impression they left behind was permanent. And as I stood there looking across the yard, I knew something else too. That night would never leave us. We would carry it forward in the way we watched shadows at night, in the way every unexplained sound set our nerves on edge. The Hopkinsville Goblins were gone, but their presence, their testing, lingered, and perhaps in some distant field or dark corner of the world, they waited for the next house, the next threshold, to study anew. By late morning, a strange calm settled over the farmhouse. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating splintered wood, spent shells, and the worn furniture that had witnessed the night's ordeal. Everything appeared normal, yet nothing felt normal. Every small detail, a bent nail, a scratch along the siding, a dent in the porch railing, reminded us that the night had not been imagination. We moved slowly, carefully inspecting the house. Each of us was quiet, lost in our own thoughts. The men tried to piece together the events, discussing trajectories, number of creatures, even their impossible movements. The women spoke softly among themselves, exchanging observations of sounds and glimpses through the windows, and all the while, the children clung to the edges of the room, wide-eyed but increasingly trusting the light of day. I found myself returning again and again to the side window where one of the goblins had hung from the roof. The imprint of panic and the sense of its steady, glowing eyes lingered in my mind. I could still see it, floating, tilting, observing with patience that was almost human. There was intelligence there, undeniable, and yet utterly alien. It wasn't malevolence that had driven them, or at least not in the sense we understand. It was curiosity, an unblinking, relentless study of us, our reactions, our fear, and perhaps even our resilience. By midday, news had reached the nearby town of Hopkinsville. Authorities came cautiously, initially skeptical, yet hesitant when presented with the damage and the anxious testimony of multiple witnesses. The night's events, no matter how incredible, could not be denied entirely. And as the men spoke, trying to recall every movement of those small figures, I understood that this story would grow beyond our farmhouse, beyond our understanding. It would become legend, a tale whispered in town across Kentucky, a warning and a marvel all at once. And though the creatures had vanished, the sense of their presence persisted. In the corners of rooms, in the flicker of light across the field, in the rustle of the trees, it felt as though the night had left a mark, not of terror alone, but of something older, something patient, something watching. And I knew deep down that their visit had not truly ended. The following days were surreal. Life returned to the farm in the ordinary sense, chores, meals, sunlight, but a shadow had been cast over everything. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of a lantern, every rustle in the cornfields reminded us that we had not been alone. The memory of those glowing yellow eyes haunted my dreams. I would wake in the pre-dawn hours, certain that some small, silent figure was floating just beyond the window. Visitors and neighbors came, curious about the story we had to tell. Some laughed, others expressed disbelief, yet even skeptics couldn't ignore the damage to the house, the worn paths in the yard, and the sheer terror etched into our faces. Local authorities took reports, examined the evidence, and left with uneasy looks. They were polite, professional, but their questions betrayed their own discomfort. Something in her account, the precision of her terror, the repetition of creatures' behavior, the calm in their approach, resonated far beyond superstition. We spoke little among ourselves about what truly happened. Words felt inadequate. How could one convey the unnatural grace of being that floated backward through the air, or the intelligence in the tilt of a head, the deliberate study of her every move? It was as though they had catalogued us, logged our reactions, and then vanished with the dawn, leaving only a lingering awareness of observation. Even when performing the most mundane tasks, I found myself scanning the tree line, anticipating movement that never came. The world felt smaller, as though their attention had stretched across every inch of our lives that night. And perhaps in the quietest moments, I sensed that somewhere beyond the farm, beyond the fields, they remained patient, watching, waiting for another night, another threshold, another human to study. The memory of that encounter was no longer just an event, it had become a presence, a constant shadow. We had survived, yes, but survival carried its own weight. It was the knowledge that in the vast, dark reaches of the night, there are eyes that see, and patience that waits, and creatures that learn more about you than you will ever understand. Years have passed since that night, yet the memory remains as vivid as the first gunshot. The farmhouse stands still, though the walls bear the scars of what occurred, bullet holes, splintered wood, and marks on the siding that no explanation could fully account for. Visitors occasionally remark on the air around the property, sensing something unusual, though few have ever approached with the courage of those who lived through that August night in 1955. I find myself thinking often about the creatures, small, silent, and impossibly observant. The way they floated, the way they studied every movement, every reaction. There was intelligence there, deliberate and calculating, but it was not cruelty in the sense we understand. It was something older, something patient. Something that existed on a scale of thought and intent we could scarcely comprehend. That awareness leaves a lingering chill that what we saw, what we experienced is not merely gone. It waits, it watches, it catalogs. Perhaps it moves on to other homes, other fields, other unsuspecting families, carrying the same methodical curiosity that visited ours. I often replay that night in my mind, the soft rustle of the leaves, the tapping on the walls, the weightless flips in the porch light, the cold, unblinking glow of their eyes. I see them now in the quiet moments, in shadows cast by streetlights, in reflections where nothing should be. And I realize that fear is only one part of what we carried home with us. The other is an understanding that the world is not as empty as it seems, that our perception of safety is fragile, and that patience and intelligence can manifest in forms wholly beyond our reckoning. Those who lived through the night of the Hopkinsville Goblins rarely speak of it, and yet, for those of us who were there, the encounter is not just a story. It is a permanent imprint on the soul, a reminder that in the quiet darkness, the watchers are always here, silent, calculating, eternal. And I will never forget the cold, metallic gaze that followed us across the yard, across the field, and into the corners of my memory. where it lingers still, unseen but unmistakably present.